In the heart of a land too often forgotten by maps, there lay a small village named Lumara. It was a place where the sun painted everything golden by day and darkness swallowed it whole by night. There was no electricity, no streetlights, and no hum of machines, only the whisper of wind through the trees and the soft crackle of firewood. Among the children of Lumara lived Ethan Miller, a boy of 12 whose eyes shone with curiosity and dreams far too big for the village's dusty roads. Ethan's family owned little, a small hut made of clay and straw, 2 goats, and a handful of books passed down from a traveling teacher who once came through. Ethan's mother, Grace Miller, was the quiet strength of the family. A woman in her late 20s, she spent her days tending a small garden and teaching village children how to read. Her husband had left years ago in search of work and never returned. Still, Grace never let sorrow settle on her face. The sun always rises, Ethan, she would say. Even after the darkest night. Every evening, Ethan would sit on the floor beside a single candle, its flame flickering as he read his old, torn science book. The pages fascinated him. He dreamed of light, of bulbs that shone without fire, of wires that carried power through homes, of machines that made life easier. But to the villagers, such things were stories of another world. One night, as Grace sewed by candlelight, Ethan looked up from his book and said softly, "Mom, what if our village could have light too?" Grace smiled, though she kept her eyes on her stitching. "That's a beautiful dream, Ethan. Maybe one day it will." "I don't want to wait for one day," he whispered. The next morning, Ethan went to school with a plan growing in his mind. His teacher, Mr. Carter, was a kind American volunteer who had come to Lumara to help build a school years ago. He noticed Ethan's fascination with science and often stayed late to teach him extra lessons. After class, Ethan approached him shyly. "Mr. Carter, can you teach me how electricity works?" The teacher smiled, brushing chalk dust from his hands. "Electricity, huh, that's a big topic, but I think you've got the spark for it." For weeks, Ethan stayed after school. They built small circuits using old batteries, wires, and light bulbs salvaged from old radios. Ethan learned about currents, voltage, and renewable energy. The idea of using wind to create power caught his imagination most of all. Every evening, Ethan walked home through the quiet village, his mind full of spinning blades and glowing lights. At home, he began collecting scraps, tin cans, old bicycle parts, and wooden sticks. Grace didn't understand at first but trusted his purpose. "Be careful, Ethan," she warned as he hammered nails into wood. "I'm making light, Mom," he replied with a grin. Days turned into weeks, and Ethan's small project began to take shape, a tiny windmill, fragile but full of hope. The villagers watched him curiously. Some laughed softly. "What can a boy do that grown men couldn't?" one said. But Grace defended her son with quiet pride. "Sometimes hope starts small," she said. One afternoon, a storm rolled in, fierce winds sweeping across Lumara. Ethan's half-finished windmill trembled, and he ran outside, trying to secure it. Grace ran after him, pulling him under shelter as rain poured down. The windmill broke that night, its blades shattered by the storm. Ethan sat on the floor, head in his hands, tears streaking his cheeks. "It's over," he said. Grace knelt beside him, her voice soft but steady. "Dreams don't die, Ethan. They just wait for the right moment." Those words lit something inside him. The next day, he began again. This time, he worked smarter, stronger. Mr. Carter brought him extra materials from the city. Grace cooked for him while he worked late into the night. The whole village began to notice, and slowly, they began to help. Old men offered wood, children collected scrap metal, even the skeptical neighbors lent tools. The dream that once belonged to a single boy had now spread across Lumara. After 3 long months, the new windmill stood proudly on the hill above the village. Its blades stretched wide, catching the afternoon breeze. Ethan wired it to a small battery and a single light bulb. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he held his breath. The wind began to blow. The blades turned, slow at first, then faster. And then, for the first time in Lumara's history, a light bulb flickered on. Gasps filled the air. Grace's eyes glistened as tears ran down her face. "You did it, Ethan," she whispered. "You brought us light." Word spread quickly. Soon, the village gathered every night beneath the glowing bulb, amazed at the small miracle. The windmill couldn't power the whole village yet, but it proved something greater, that change was possible. Over time, with help from volunteers and teachers inspired by Ethan's project, more windmills were built. The school got its first lights, then the clinic. Life in Lumara began to transform. Years later, Ethan grew into a young man who studied engineering with a scholarship sponsored by organizations that heard his story. But he never forgot where he came from. Every holiday, he returned to Lumara, not just as the boy who brought light, but as a man who inspired a generation to believe in hope. On one such visit, he stood beside Grace, watching the windmill spin across the hills. The entire village glowed warmly beneath the night sky. "You were right, Mom," he said. "The sun always rises." Grace smiled, placing her hand on his shoulder. "And sometimes, my son, it rises because someone dares to build it." The stars shone brightly above them, but in Lumara, the lights below shone brighter, born not of fire or fuel, but of one boy's dream to bring hope to his world.